Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into one of the absolute strangest, most fascinating mysteries in the worlds of chemistry and pharmacology. We're looking at a literal scientific paradox. How on earth can one identical molecule create two completely different human experiences? It is just a perfect illustration of how the way a molecule enters your body can actually matter just as much as the molecule itself. So think about it like having the exact same key, but using it to open two wildly different doors. On one side, you have a brief detonation, a rocket ship that launches you into a 15-minute trip that is incredibly fast, blinding, and overwhelming. But then, on the other side, you have a 6-hour voyage, a slow, immersive, deeply emotional river. How does the exact same key do both? Well, it all comes down to a single, beautifully elegant trick of chemistry.
Section 1. The baseline biology, the guard at the door.
Okay, let's dive into this. At the center of both of these distinct experiences is a pretty simple tryptamine psychedelic, N-dimethyltryptamine, or just DMT for short. It's actually a close chemical cousin to things like serotonin and melatonin, and it works primarily by binding to the serotonin 5-H2A receptor in the brain. But what's truly mind-blowing here is that this molecule is found naturally, right now, in trace amounts inside your own body. It's in human cerebral spinal fluid, for instance, even though its exact physiological purpose is still heavily debated by scientists today.
But here is the catch. If you were to just simply swallow pure DMT, absolutely nothing would happen. Zero. And this brilliantly illustrates our baseline biological hurdle, the bouncer. See, your gut and your liver contain an enzyme called monoamine oxidase, or MAO. This enzyme basically acts as a strict biological bouncer that instantly intercepts and destroys pure DMT before it can ever even reach your bloodstream or your brain. So if you want this molecule to actually do anything, you have to find a way past the bouncer.
Section 2. Door number 1. The bypass. Smoked DMT.
So how do we get past them? Well, while oral DMT is completely neutralized by the gut's MAO enzyme, the brute force method of smoking or vaporizing it changes the game entirely. By inhaling it, the molecule goes straight from your lungs, into your bloodstream, and then right to your brain. It completely 100% sneaks past the gut's bouncer. And because it bypasses the digestive system entirely, the sheer speed of this onset is just staggering. We are talking less than 45 seconds from inhalation to a complete physiological peak, and the whole shebang is over in about 5 to 20 minutes. It hits so fast that back in the 1960s, it actually earned the nickname the businessman's trip, simply because someone could theoretically experience a profound altered state over their lunch break.
Naturally, this sheer speed and intensity translates into a massive physiological experience. When it's inhaled, that sudden flooding of the brain creates what's commonly called a breakthrough, a total instantaneous shift in perception. And the cultural icons of this space have documented this extensively. You've got Terence McKenna, who famously coined the term machine elves to describe the autonomous entities people so often report encountering. And then in the 1990s, during his landmark clinical studies at the University of New Mexico, which involved 400 intravenous doses of DMT, Dr. Rick Strassman dubbed it the spirit molecule. Over half of his volunteers actually reported these vivid encounters. It's fast, it's solitary, and it is completely overwhelming.
Section 3. Door number 2. The blockade. Ayahuasca and the MAOI trick.
Now, instead of completely bypassing the gut's bouncer, what if you could just temporarily disable him? Enter the MAOI, or monoamine oxidase inhibitor. Deep in the Amazon, indigenous peoples actually figured out how to combine plants to achieve this exact precise chemical trick. They use a vine called Banisteriopsis caapi, which contains compounds called harmala beta-carbolines. These compounds are MAOIs. Literally, their sole biological job in this context is to temporarily shut down that MAO enzyme in your gut.
Let's actually walk through the brilliant biochemical logic of this, step by step. Step 1. A brewed tea, ayahuasca, is consumed. Now, this tea combines two very specific plants out of the tens of thousands growing in the Amazon rainforest. It combines the Psychotria viridis leaf, which contains the DMT, with the bee caapi vine, which contains the MAOI. Step 2. The harmala alkaloids from the vine immediately go to work blocking the MAO enzyme in your stomach. And step 3. Because the bouncer is now temporarily asleep on the job, the DMT from the leaf is protected. It can safely absorb right through the gut and into the bloodstream. They somehow found the exact two plants needed to unlock this molecule by mouth. It's just a pre-scientific pharmacological masterpiece. Just imagine the physical difference here. Instead of a blinding flash, You are now experiencing a slow, deeply immersive voyage unfolding over 4 to 6 hours. Because the DMT is absorbing slowly through the digestive tract rather than just flooding in through the lungs, the whole experience changes. It takes a good 30 to 60 minutes just to feel the onset. It's usually taken in these hours-long guided ceremonies. And, very importantly, because of the massive surge of serotonin signaling happening locally in the gut, it almost universally induces a physical purge, vomiting, known as la purga, which is considered a ritually meaningful release of energy in these traditions.
Section 4. The real-world stakes: safety, culture, and science.
So the crucial point is that the difference between the bypass and the blockade fundamentally changes the real-world realities of this molecule. Comparing these two methods side by side brilliantly illustrates how the presence of the MAOI entirely alters what pharmacologists call the pharmacokinetic envelope. Without the MAOI, smoked DMT takes under a minute to hit, lasts maybe 20 minutes, is usually done solo without a purge, and its signature risk is really just the psychological weight of its acute intensity. But add that MAOI in, ayahuasca takes up to an hour to kick in, lasts 6 hours, involves purging in a ceremonial setting, and, most importantly for safety, introduces the severe physical risk of MAOI interactions.
And actually, we need to pause here for a second because this is a vital educational takeaway regarding pharmacology. The MAOI in ayahuasca makes it physically dangerous to combine with many modern medications. If you were to combine an MAOI with SSRI antidepressants, SNRIs, or other serotonergic drugs like MDMA, it can trigger a potentially life-threatening condition called serotonin syndrome. Combining it with stimulants risks a hypertensive crisis. Now, both forms of the molecule are contraindicated for anyone with a history of cardiovascular disease or psychosis for sure, but it is specifically the MAOI and the ayahuasca brew that turns standard pharmaceutical combinations into severe medical hazards.
Beyond the safety profile, we also have some really nuanced legal realities. In the United States, the DMT molecule is classified as a Schedule I substance, which means ayahuasca is broadly illegal just by virtue of containing it. However, there's a fascinating legal exception here. In a landmarked 2006 Supreme Court case, the court ruled unanimously that under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, the government actually could not bar the UDV Church, which is a Brazilian syncretic church, from using their sacramental ayahuasca tea. And similar federal protections were later extended to another church, Santo Daime.
All right, so we've got the chemistry, the history, and the law. But what about the clinical science? Well, the number 64% represents a major milestone in modern psychiatry. In a landmark 2019 randomized placebo-controlled clinical trial led by Poljano Fontes, researchers tested ayahuasca specifically for treatment-resistant depression. And the results? At day 7, 64% of the ayahuasca group showed a significant antidepressant response. Compare that to just 27% on the placebo. This was the first controlled trial of a psychedelic in a treatment-resistant depression population, putting this ancient botanical brew squarely into the modern psychiatric spotlight.
Section 5. Conclusion. The pharmacokinetic envelope.
So we've seen that DMT and ayahuasca are the exact same molecule wearing two utterly different faces, right? The mask separating them is just a single enzyme blocker. And the science isn't stopping here. Because the smoked version of DMT clears the body so rapidly, researchers are now pioneering something called extended state DMT, or DMTX. By using continuous intravenous infusions, kind of like anesthesia in a hospital, they can keep the molecule flowing at a steady rate, extending that brief 15-minute window into a prolonged, steerable state. They're finally able to map and study the pure DMT space in depth without needing the plant-based MAOI blockade to keep it active. Which really leaves us with this final thought to ponder. We've seen how elegant and precise biological mechanisms can be. Just one plant compound, disabling one gut enzyme, completely rewires the human experience of this molecule from a fleeting flash into a profound overnight voyage. It really makes you wonder, if a single enzyme blocker can do all of that, what other incredible synergies are hiding out there in the pharmacokinetics of the natural world, just waiting to be understood?